It was 9:06 a.m. when my name echoed across the floor. "Ava, boss wants to see you in his office." I didn't flinch. I'd heard that tone before, too casual, too smug. It was Kevin, one of the junior analysts, trying too hard to mask the smirk tugging at his lips. The kind of smirk people wear when they know something you don't. I stood from my desk, spine straight, pulse steady. Around me, the office suddenly felt quieter. Eyes darted up from screens. Conversations dimmed into whispers. Some people didn't even pretend they weren't watching. I walked past them all. Cubicles filled with familiar faces I'd mentored, trained, stayed late for. People who, 10 years ago, were strangers. Now, still strangers, just ones who'd borrowed my ideas and smiled like they came up with them. I didn't knock. I never had to knock. "Come in, Ava," my boss said, already grinning. Brandon Lane, 45, sleek, arrogant. Expensive suit, even more expensive watch, and the soul of a man who'd step over loyalty just to shake hands with opportunity. He didn't ask me to sit. Next to him stood a girl, early 20s, shiny-eyed, dressed like she was here to audition for a fashion ad, not a financial firm. Her name tag was crooked, and she clutched a leather folder like it might save her from drowning. Brandon turned toward me, voice loud enough to ensure the hallway would hear. "I need you to train our new recruit, Claire. 2 months. Show her everything." I nodded slowly, eyes meeting his. "Of course. Standard onboarding." He chuckled. Loudly. "Oh no," he said. "Not standard. You'll train her to replace you." Silence. Heavy, stifling. "Because once she's trained," he continued, grinning now, "you're fired." He said it like it was a joke. Like he was performing. Because he was. I could hear a few gasps from the corridor. Kevin was definitely still eavesdropping. The show was for them. I didn't blink. I just smiled too calmly. "Noted," I said, and turned to walk out. I didn't ask for an explanation. I didn't beg. I didn't demand fairness. I'd learned long ago, when someone shows you who they are, don't ask them to be different. Back at my desk, I resumed work as usual. Not a single extra beat in my rhythm. Emails, client updates, team schedules. Claire approached me hesitantly, but I greeted her with warmth, genuine kindness. She wasn't the enemy. She was just another player in a game she didn't know was already rigged. But what Brandon didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I'd quietly purchased 52% of the company's shares last month under a silent consortium of investors. It had taken me years, slow networking, late-night meetings, multiple LLCs. I'd been patient, methodical. Now I was the majority shareholder. The only thing left? Timing. So I smiled at Claire. I showed her the ropes. I praised her when she learned fast. I brought her coffee when she was struggling. Every person watching me, waiting for me to break, I gave them nothing but grace. But the next morning, the boardroom was booked under a name nobody recognized, a Heartventures. By 8:30 a.m., everyone was called in, and I walked in, not as Brandon's employee, but as his boss. And what I said next, well, let's just say nobody saw it coming. The double glass doors creaked open at exactly 8:29 a.m., slicing through the murmuring tension in the boardroom. All 12 members of the executive team sat upright, expressions flipping from curiosity to confusion the second they saw me walk in, not in my usual office wear, but in a tailored navy suit that exhaled quiet power. Brandon, seated at the head, leaned back like he was watching an illusion. "Is this a joke?" he said. "This meeting's for shareholders only." I placed a folder on the table and flipped it open without a word. Inside were the finalized documents, signed, sealed, verified by the firm's legal department. The moment his eyes landed on the papers, I saw it happen. The shift. His eyes twitched. His mouth opened and closed once, then again, like a fish out of water. "I bought out Nolan Group Holdings last month," I said calmly, tapping the logo in the corner. They held 22% of this company. I acquired the remaining shares from 5 silent partners over the last year. I met each set of eyes around the table. As of this morning, I own 52%. Someone gasped. Brandon's face turned a stunning shade of white. This is absurd. You've been planning this? Behind my back. I gave a soft nod, as if offering condolences. You taught me well. Always think 2 steps ahead. Always smile while you're being underestimated. He shoved back from the table. This is an ambush. No, Brandon, I replied, my voice steady. This is a board meeting, and I'm here to present a motion. The room fell completely silent as I stepped up to the screen and clicked a button on the remote. A presentation titled Company Ethics, Retention, and Culture Reform appeared. First item on the agenda, I continued, a vote to restructure leadership, beginning with the removal of the current CEO due to patterns of unethical behavior, manipulation, and hostile work environment. Brandon stood, face red, jaw clenched. You ungrateful little.
Sit, said a voice.
It wasn't mine. It was David Lynn, head of investor relations. He'd been with the company longer than me. He rarely spoke, but now his voice rang sharp. We've seen how you treated your team. The rumors? We believed them. Brandon's jaw dropped. I second the motion, David said. And within 2 minutes he was out. Escorted out by security, not by force but by shame. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. I stood quietly while the board clapped. My hands never moved, because this wasn't about revenge. It was about resetting the damage. Reclaiming dignity, not just mine, but for every person who'd ever been humiliated in the name of hierarchy. The news traveled fast. By noon, the floor was buzzing. Some watched me with awe, others with hesitation. And then there were a few, like Claire, who knocked gently on my new office door with wide, nervous eyes. Miss Hart, she asked. I looked up.
Ava.
Just Ava. I just wanted to say thank you for being kind to me, even when... She didn't finish. You didn't do anything wrong, I said gently. You were put in a hard position. I see potential in you, Claire. I'm not going to waste it. She blinked, startled. And I realized she'd never had a woman in power show her kindness before. That was going to change. This company would no longer run on fear. Not anymore. Not under me. But peace, growth, it doesn't come easy. And some people, they weren't happy with the shift. One of them, in particular, would do something in the shadows that could jeopardize everything. But I wasn't the same Ava I used to be. And this time, I was ready. I sat alone in my new office that evening, long after the last round of congratulations had faded and the building had gone mostly silent. The view from the top floor stretched across the city skyline, glowing in orange and purple hues. But I wasn't looking at the horizon. I was staring at my reflection in the window. I looked powerful, composed. But inside, I was exhausted. 10 years of swallowing my pride, staying late without credit, building systems others took credit for, and holding teams together during chaos, had finally led here. But something still tugged at my chest, unsettled. Then my phone buzzed. An email. Subject: Urgent. Confidential doc leak? I clicked it open and froze. Attached was a PDF of internal communications, sensitive memos I had drafted, part of the culture reform presentation. Notes about Brandon's past behavior. Some that weren't even shown in the boardroom yet.
Leaked. And worse?
The metadata traced it back to my old assistant, Sasha. I stared at the screen, throat tight. She'd been like a sister to me once. Back when I was working late and skipping lunch, she used to bring me food. We confided in each other. I even covered her tuition once when she couldn't afford her final college installment.
And now?
She'd sold me out. I called security and requested the logs. Sure enough, after Brandon was escorted out, Sasha had accessed my office using her old keycard, which hadn't been disabled yet. She'd forwarded the drafts from my computer, covered her tracks, and sent the info to a known competitor. It was a deliberate hit. Not from Brandon directly, but orchestrated by him. Through her. I could have called legal. Had her arrested. Fired. But something deeper ached in me. I requested she be sent to my office the next morning. No threats. No public humiliation. Just a conversation. She arrived, shoulders hunched, face pale. She didn't sit. You knew, I said simply. I helped you. Trusted you. Her voice was a whisper. I didn't want to. But Brandon, he promised. He told me you were going to fire me anyway. That you were cleaning house. I stared at her. And you believed that? She bit her lip, eyes glistening. I was scared, she whispered. I stood and walked around the desk, right up to her. You're not getting fired, I said. She blinked, startled. What? You're not getting fired, I repeated. But I am transferring you to community outreach. She stared at me like I'd lost my mind. You betrayed me, I said, calm but firm. But I still remember the girl who stayed up with me past midnight building those analytics dashboards. You're not beyond redemption. I'm giving you one chance. Earn it. Her knees nearly buckled. She nodded, eyes brimming. I didn't forgive her. Not yet. But I wasn't here to be another Brandon. Later that day, I walked the office floor again, observing, listening. Whispers followed me. But this time, it wasn't out of fear. It was curiosity. Wonder. Claire caught up with me near the elevators, holding a trembling mug of coffee and a notebook. I know it's not my place, she said quickly, but I heard what happened with Sasha. I turned to her. That's the kind of leader I want to become, she said, voice soft but steady. I smiled. For the first time that day, it reached my eyes. You will, I said. And faster than you think. But even as I rode the elevator up again, something cold lingered at the base of my neck. Because Brandon wasn't done. And the next move wouldn't be so clean. 3 weeks passed. The office transformed. People started smiling more, not because they had to, but because they weren't holding their breath anymore. Meetings weren't ego battles. Ideas actually got heard. Interns were speaking up, seniors were listening. Productivity went up. Tension went down. It wasn't perfect, but for the first time in a long time, it felt human. Still, every day I woke up with a quiet throb behind my ribs, like the air had grown colder even in spring. And on a Monday morning that felt just a little too still, I found out why. The call came from internal security. There's been a breach, they said. Financial records. Legal archives. Someone got into the server remotely using credentials tied to your old access hierarchy. Nothing stolen yet, but it looks like a search was made for whistleblower policies. That wasn't just concerning. That was a message. And I knew who sent it. Brandon was circling. He wasn't coming for my title. He was coming for my reputation. I tightened our cybersecurity systems, restructured access protocols, and brought in an external firm to audit every digital trail. I didn't panic. But I couldn't ignore the reality. This man, who once smirked at me across a desk, was now desperate. And desperation is dangerous. Later that evening, I sat in my car outside my father's old bookstore. I hadn't been here in months. The lights were off inside, the windows dusty. He'd passed away 2 years ago. But the place still smelled like paper, ink, and quiet lessons. It was here, he once told me, the world will try to turn your kindness into a weakness. But the moment you let them, you become like them. I leaned my head against the steering wheel, eyes burning. I hadn't cried yet. Not during the takeover, not during Brandon's fall, not even when Sasha betrayed me.
But now?
I felt everything. 10 years of loyalty. The silent humiliations. The nights I pretended not to hear people laughing at how boring and stiff I was. The friendships that crumbled the moment I got promoted. The loneliness that clung to my shoulders like damp wool. I let the tears fall silently.
Just a few.
Just enough to let the weight shift. And then, I drove home. The next morning, I arrived earlier than usual. The sun hadn't even climbed past the skyline. Claire was already there, seated at her desk, headphones in, fingers moving across her keyboard with focus. She looked up, startled when I placed a cappuccino in front of her. "You've been coming early," I said. She smiled, sheepish, trying to prove I'm more than a pretty face. "You are," I said simply. "That's already clear." She blinked fast. That quiet moment? It reminded me of a younger version of myself, eager, overworked, invisible to the men who made all the rules. But I wasn't invisible anymore. And neither would she be. Later that week, just when the air began to feel calm again, a package arrived for me. No sender. No label. Inside, a single photograph.
Of me. Taken last night.
In my car.
Crying.
My hand tightened around the frame. Whoever had taken it wanted to send a message. You're being watched. But what they didn't know, I wasn't afraid of being watched. Not anymore. I had climbed too far to fall. And if Brandon wanted a war, he'd be facing a woman who knew the rules and had already learned how to break them gracefully. The photo sat on my desk like a ticking clock. I didn't call the police. I didn't call security. I just stared at it, long and hard, until something inside me settled. This wasn't just intimidation. It was desperation. Brandon had no weapons left but fear. And I refused to let that shadow overtake the new light we'd built here. Still, I doubled surveillance. Not to protect myself, but to protect the people under me. My employees. My team. My responsibility. The next few days unfolded with eerie silence. No more emails. No more leaks. No more threats. Until Friday. We were hosting our first internal People First Forum, an initiative I'd launched to help every employee, from intern to executive, voice concerns anonymously and build forward-facing solutions together.
Claire was speaking.
Nervous. Shaky hands. But her voice was steady. I used to think power belonged to people who looked a certain way, who acted like kindness didn't belong in a boardroom, she said. But I don't believe that anymore. Because I've seen the difference one kind person can make in a cold place. Her eyes flicked to me, then back to the room. And I want to be that kind of person too. The applause was slow, but it built until the room felt full of warmth. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. But I answered. You think you've won. Brandon's voice hissed low, sharp. You think pretending to be noble will protect you. But sooner or later, someone will see who you really are. I paused.
Took a breath.
Brandon, I said, calm. I already know who I really am. I'm just sorry you never figured out who you were without control. He laughed bitterly. You really think being good will keep you in power? No, I said. But it'll help me sleep at night. Silence. Then the line went dead. That would be the last time I ever heard his voice. Because the next morning I got a message from my legal team. Brandon had tried to file a retaliatory complaint, but it backfired. Not only was his claim dismissed, but the review unearthed old HR complaints, ones that had mysteriously been buried during his reign. He was officially banned from serving as executive in any registered firm for the next 5 years. I didn't feel triumphant. I felt relieved. But something still nagged at me. Sasha. I'd left her in the outreach department, away from the main floor. She hadn't spoken much since. But I saw her name on the volunteer list for our latest community event. She'd signed up for everything. So I stopped by the outreach wing one afternoon and found her elbow deep in planning kits for underprivileged students. She looked up, startled. Ms. Hart. Ava. I reminded gently. She nodded quickly.
Sorry.
Ava. I glanced around. You've been busy. She nodded again. I'm just trying to fix things. I walked over, picked up one of the backpacks she'd stuffed with school supplies. You already are. She blinked, confused. Everyone makes mistakes, I said. But not everyone chooses to change. You did. Tears welled in her eyes. But I didn't hug her. I just smiled and walked away, quietly, respectfully. A few weeks later, at our quarterly town hall, I stood in front of the full company, every seat filled, every eye watching. I didn't give a speech. I told a story about how I once gave everything to a job that didn't see me, how I trained people who passed me up, how I walked out of an office after being publicly humiliated, and how I came back the next day, not for revenge, but to build something better. Power isn't about making people fear you, I said, my voice clear. It's about making people believe in themselves, in each other, in what we can create together. They rose to their feet, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. As I stood there, the noise washing over me, Claire handed me a note. It said, simply, "Thank you for showing us what real power looks like." I didn't cry, but for the first time in years, I finally felt seen.